Hi, I'm Stephanie, and I'm going to tell you about my secondary source. I chose American Poetry to 1914, the Critical Cosmos series, edited by Harold Bloom. This volume of American poetry includes criticisms of poets from the Puritans through the First World War. It was published in 1987 by Chelsea House Publishers. It's a really good collection of short chapters on a variety of different authors and poets during the early American era. Some of the highlighted poets from the Puritan era include Anne Bradstreet, Edward Taylor, and Philip Frenet. Other noted American poets are Phillis Wheatley, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Walt Whitman, Herman Melville, Henry David Thoreau, Emily Dickinson, and etc. And then the pictures down here are Emerson, Bradstreet, and Dickinson. The Puritan influence in this text is kind of limited, but it was actually very helpful for my paper on Edward Taylor because there is such little information on him. Another influence is Anne Bradstreet. Robert Daly provides a balance of her writing of worldly things and the pilgrimage to heaven. According to Daly, Bradstreet's poems were considered more domestic than religious. Lewis March discusses Edward Taylor's use of metaphor and typology in preparatory meditations. He says, Taylor is not a primitive. He is a subtle, learned man who kept his Theocritus and Origen, his Augustine and Horace, with him in the wilderness. Something else that I really found interesting with this text from Lewis March is he says that Taylor gave root to Emerson's nature images, and Whitman is linked to Emerson, etc. So this text helps you be able to see the connection between the Puritan writers and the later American writers such as Emerson and Thoreau and their nature influence. Each poet is also analyzed by a different author with topic ranging from literary works, images, form, metaphor, secrets, and affection. There are also symbols and religious typology mentioned throughout, which allow for an understanding of the Puritan influence. Looking into the text, here's a citation. Harold Bloom's edition includes 20 influential American poets up to 1914. A large number of the poets in this edition are compared with Emerson, Whitman, and Dickinson, and this is, like I said earlier, it's really interesting to see the connection between somebody like Taylor and Emerson and how Emerson was able to get his foundation from Taylor's writing. Emerson is said to resemble the spirit of the American poet, and not our greatest writer, but merely our only inescapable one, to be found always where Whitman asked to be sought. Taylor leads the way for Emerson and Thoreau's nature's writings. It is also suggested in this text that Bradstreet broke free from the constraints of Puritanism and recorded the rebellion in her poetry. Something else I found interesting that helped me with my paper on Taylor was that his poetry is said to echo that of George Herbert's. So this text is really useful for critical analysis and also to compare individual texts, the more popular texts of the poets and authors. It is pertinent to the study of early American poets and authors. It is a valuable tertiary source. This is a very useful secondary source, especially I think for our Puritan class. It includes an extensive introduction linking Emerson, Whitman, and Dickinson together with some of their contemporaries, which I already mentioned. It provides brief biographical information on all of the poets This was helpful to me because usually you have to go to another source, which I also did consult other sources for biographical, but it's really rare, I think, to find biographical information, bibliographies, critical analysis, all in one source. Like I said, there are bibliographies for each poet. There are major works of the poets and authors. Some of the pros and cons of this text. The pros are that it's easy to navigate and provides critical analysis of the early American poets. And there's a lot of material on Emerson, Whitman, and Dickinson. If you are interested in any of those poets, this would be a great go-to source. Cons is that it was published in 1988, so it's a little bit outdated, or 87 rather, but I think the information is still relevant, especially when you get a poet such as Edward Taylor, as I did, and there's really not much out there. The minor poets are discussed in 10 to 15 pages, which seems extensive, but really some of the things that they're discussing, it would be helpful if it was a little bit more extensive. And here's my works cited. And that is American Poetry to 1914. Thank you for watching.